Geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gats and kittens, comic fans from all over the world, welcome to another fact-filled, fun-filled episode of Ask Chuck Dixon. Our first question is kind of deep. Paul Williams asks, do you believe humans naturally good or intrinsically evil? How does your view affect your writing? I think most people are basically decent. I mean, we're born good, and if we're raised right, we turn into decent people. I think the building blocks are there. As I get older and I've had my own kids, I realize that, we're born with a lot of our personality intact. We're born with 90% of our personality ready to go, and the rest of it is rearing and environment. But I really do think the vast majority of people in the country are good. Now, there's a tiny minority of bastards who will always ruin it for all of us, out of selfishness or whatever. But truly evil people, they're rare. But they're out there. But I think most people, you travel around, you go out on your daily rounds or go on a trip or whatever. Generally the people you run into are nice, decent, helpful individuals. But you got to remember, we live in a fallen world. I really do believe that we're all sinners. We're all atoning. We're constantly trying to better ourselves, trying to fight our better angels. At least most of us are. But like I said, there's that tiny minority, and I do believe in actual, real evil. I don't want to get any deeper into it than that, but I think there are people who are not just criminally insane or whatever. I think there are people that are evil. They have evil intent. Something is broken inside of them, and they are beyond redemption. And I honestly believe that. And of course, a lot of that drives my writing, because I'm writing about good guys and bad guys, and sometimes the gray areas between. So these are issues that I think a lot about. And when you watch the news, it makes you think about it. So because most of the news is a presentation of all the evils of the world. The news is practically a laundry list of reasons why we live in a fallen world. And but yeah, I believe most people are good, at least in my experience. But of course, I live in Florida. Everybody down here seems so friendly. Seems so nice. Okay, Rex Moss, the Rippaverse September newsletter says, Rippaverse in space. I've heard that Rippaverse in space is one of your unannounced books. In a podcast today, September 2nd, Eric July said he had 2 non-Horseman books almost ready to be released and more scripts ready to start being drawn. Any hints, denials? I'm sure none of the Rippaverse editors listen to your podcast. Well, as you know, I do have the Horseman coming, and I've already revealed that I've written a Horseman sequel, which is Joe Bennett's next project. But in between those two, I can't tell you a whole lot. But in between those two, I worked on 2 projects that Eric requested of me. And it's basically the 2 projects form one big project. It's a part 1 and part 2. And it delves into some of the history of the Rippaverse. And man, it was challenging, but it was a lot of fun to write. Eric gave me really just a skeleton idea, just some high concept bullet points of what he wanted covered in this series. And he just let me run wild with it. And I had a really good time on it. And the artist is freaking amazing. It's not Joe Bennett this time, but it's somebody equally jaw-dropping. So you're going to love it. But, and then following that, while Joe was still working on the Horseman, I brought up this other character. And I said, Joe, you know what the Rippaverse needs? And we put a pitch together and we put it to Eric, and he said, yeah, that's great. And it was great because we were able to schedule it. His appearance is very much like Vengeance of Bane #1, if you get my meaning. His first appearance establishes him as part of continuity at a key point in Rippaverse continuity, much as Bane was introduced at a key point in Batman continuity. So you want to look out for that. I won't tell you the name. You'll know him when you see him. Yeah, and he is in space. So and and Joe's art's going to blow you away. That's all I can say at this point. I obviously will have more to say later. Matt Owens. For me, such characters as Frank Castle and the like are indeed more compelling due to the simplicity of their mission, which offers room for character nuance. As Bruce Lee often said, take what is useful and discard the rest. I see this as a philosophical outlook that can apply to all of the arts. Would you agree? Yeah, I think the Punisher is a pure character. And people think that some writers take him as being simplistic or uncomplicated. But man, he's real complicated. Much like Superman. Superman appears to some writers as kind of boring and there's not a lot of nuance. No, there's tons of nuance. To Superman, there's tons of nuance to Frank Castle. And but you got to keep the story simple. This kind of story, the action-driven story, you want to keep as simple as possible. You don't want feathery motives for the characters. You want clearly delineated forces driving the good guy and the bad guy that bring them into collision. So yeah, I think there's something to be said for a word that's not used often enough and doesn't seem to really fit Punisher, but it does. The word elegance. Is it elegant? Is there just what we need here and nothing else? Brevity is the soul of wit. I think Bruce Lee said that too. And yeah, I'm all for that. The very first time I talked to Sylvester Stallone in person on the phone, well, in person on the phone. Anyway, talked to him on the phone. Either he or I brought up the fourth Rambo movie, which I loved, and I let him know I was a big fan of it. And he said that he had a hard time getting that made because a lot of the money people and producers and distributors, they didn't understand it. And I said, well, what they didn't understand was that it was pure. It was a pure action film. There's not a moment of wasted screen time in the whole movie. There's nothing there that doesn't need to be there. And I think that's when we really started to hit it off, because Stallone realized that I got him. He had already gotten me. Now I got him. So there you go. I think I answered your question. I'm not sure. I talked a lot. Jason Shepard. It seems to me that 1970s was a golden age for TV crime shows. Feels like half the shows that aired during that decade featured some kind of crime fighter, either a police officer or a private eye, and it was awesome. So my question is, which do you think was the best cop show of the 70s and the best private eye show? Yeah, man, there was a lot of detectives on TV at the time, and I watched a lot of them. I worked nights, so I never got to see these shows. Most of these shows, when they first aired, I would watch them. CBS used to run them late at night. They were on reruns of Kojak and Columbo and stuff like that. So I would be able to catch up with them there, and mostly in reruns. And I remember one of the CBS affiliates in Philadelphia carried Rockford every day at 4:30. So I was able to catch up with that before going to work. But yeah, man, there were a lot. It was like the 70s detective boom was like the 50s and 60s Western boom, where every night, back to back detective shows. I remember NBC on Sunday night. Once Disney went off the air, it was detectives for the rest of the evening, and I watched a lot of them, enjoyed a lot of them. But my favorite private eye, hands down, no competition, no second place, Rockford. Rockford was brilliantly written. It's a great private eye story, perfect character for James Garner to play. What I really liked about this show was they avoided formula like the plague. And you had guys like David Chase, who would go on to create The Sopranos, writing for this series, and Stephen Cannell overseeing. And you had some terrific writers coming up with, more and more inventive ways to get Rockford in trouble. They didn't start by, some of the stories would start with him being hired by a client, and the story goes awry, like most private eye stories. It deconstructs because the client's always lying. but some of them didn't. Many episodes found Rockford inserted in the story in a different way. And that's really cool because you never knew what to expect when you were watching the show. And just a hell of a cast, hell of a recurring cast. Now for cop shows, hands down, again, no second place. No one came close to Police Story. Police Story is a TV series largely forgotten today. Ran for, I think, 5 seasons on NBC. And it was an anthology series. It was a different cop or different cop team each week. And the show might be, about bunco artists. It might be about a serial rapist. It might be about bank robbers. It might be about the sniper team. Whatever. And it was produced and with Joseph Wambaugh as technical advisor. Wambaugh had written a series of bestsellers, former LA detective himself, written a series of bestsellers about police, that were wildly successful. And he was tapped by NBC to create this anthology series. And it was uniformly excellent. And like Rockford, each week when you tuned in, you weren't quite sure what you were going to see. Sometimes the episodes had a light touch. There was a recurring pair of characters played by Don Meredith and Tony LaBianco, and they were like a detective team. And those episodes had a lot of humor in them. Other episodes would get rather grim as Wambaugh's writers would explore the darker side of being a police officer, the risk to marriage, the tragic suicide rate amongst cops, and everything else. I mean, there's some really great thought-provoking drama episodes in this series. If you ever get a chance to find it, I don't know if this is streaming anywhere. It certainly should be. And the names, I mean, Stallone was in one of these. J. Michael Vincent was a recurring character, appeared over and over again. Alex Cord, Chuck Connors. I mean, anybody you can name who was in Hollywood acting at the time. And of course, Policewoman, the series with Angie Dickinson, spun off of this series. So those would be my 2 recommendations, and absolutely my favorites, Rockford and Police Story. Ace Mowick, when talking about European comics that you've read, do you try to get copies in English, or do you just receive them in the original language and just enjoy them without translation? It seems like some greats are not imported due to no English translations. One could argue it's because there's no reader demand for it in the States. But if they created a small supply, it would garner an audience, not to mention now anyone can translate something through the internet despite how tedious it is. Well, a large number of comics are available like on Amazon's Kindle, and they're translated when they're not translated into print. Personally, I just can't read comics on a device. I can't do it. It's a generational thing. As much as I want to read these comics I love, I can't bring myself to do it. I want to hold the book in my hands. I'm sorry, but more and more we're seeing translations from American and British companies translating the English. But of course, they're never going to catch up. But series like Tex Willer are beginning to appear in English, but with 75 years of Tex Willer material and probably millions of pages of text, we're never going to catch up to Tex. But yeah, I mean, I will buy any English translation of almost any European comic album, but I do buy a lot of them in their original language, in French and German and Spanish and Italian, particularly if they're Westerns, because, even if I can't read the language, I can understand a story of a Western, because they're rather, as I said before, elegant in their approach. And also the art's fantastic. I just want to look at them. They're just beautiful, beautiful books. Now they're starting to become more and more available here in the United States. Fantagraphics is doing a lot of translation of European stuff, but mostly their contribution is translating the Italian and Dutch and Danish Disney comics that appeared for generations in Europe, unseen in the United States. The Disney comics stopped publication here in the 70s, but they continued on strong in Europe with European creators creating brand new material for audiences all over Europe. And Fantagraphics does these really beautiful hardcover editions, oversized hardcover editions, because most of these appear in weekly comics like Topolino. So the art, when it appears to the European audience, is larger, and that's the way Fantagraphics prints it. They print it in these larger formats. And some of the top creators in Europe have worked on these, and the stuff is brilliant for the most part. Yeah, they're kids' comics, but I'm a comics aficionado, so I'm allowed to read kids' comics because I'm looking at them ironically or for intellectual reasons. No, I'm not. I'm reading them like I was 10, 10 years old. But good stuff. Good stuff. Fantagraphics is doing us all a favor by translating these into English, and good translations as well, I should say. Now, Epicenter Comics, I've praised them to the hilt here over and over again. They do these absolutely gorgeous hardcover editions of Benelli comics, Zagor, Tex Willer, Dylan Dog, and there's value here. I mean, Lost World, Zagor Lost World, you got to get this book. It's over 300 pages. I think it's $30. I mean, come on. 300 pages of American comics would cost you 3 times that. They now have a Kickstarter out with 3 big Tex hardcovers for $55. I mean, come on. And the art's absolutely gorgeous and stunning. If you're not into Westerns, I beg you, check out Zagor, The Lost World. You will not be disappointed. This story kicks ass. The art is amazing. And it's just good stuff. Good, dinosaurs and primitives and, just, a solid action hero, some scenes with humor. But Epicenter Comics, man, they are doing the Lord's work by bringing Italian comics to the English-speaking public. And Cinebooks has been around for years. It's a British company, and they've translated tons of stuff. I mean, I can finally read all of Lucky Luke. They're translating Spiro and Fantasio. Any number of great series, dramas, comedies, just fantastic stuff. And there's these nice, paperback editions, the same size as the original albums. And so the stuff's available, but like I said, we're never going to catch up. We're never going to catch up with 80 years of great European comics because we got started too late. And I think there's an audience here in the book market, in the school market for these. There must be, because they keep publishing them. Somebody's buying these. I mean, I have a whole shelf of Fantagraphics Euro Disney stuff. So somebody's buying it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. I imagine libraries. And book sales are probably pretty strong. And if you're just a comic book guy who goes to your comic book shop and you know what Marvel and DC and Dark Horse put out, and that's it, you really need to open up to a larger world of the book market graphic novels because there's a lot out there. And a lot of it is European reprints. Drew Geraci. If movies of Captain America, Submariner, and the original Human Torch came out during World War II, what actors from that era would you cast? Well, you'd have a dream team of actors you could never get. Submariner, Human Torch, Captain America, if you don't know your comic book history, they were Marvel's premier characters during World War II. They went off to fight Imperial Japan and the Third Reich, and it's great stuff. Jack Kirby, Bill Everett, Carl Burgos, guys like that. And Captain America was made into a serial. I've never seen an episode of that, so I don't know what that's like. But guy looked good in the costume, and that's the secret, of course, isn't it? You gotta get an athletic actor, and in some fantasy world where I'm a big Hollywood studio mogul, and I've got the budget to make a big budget superhero movie during the World War II era. Who would I cast as Namor? Well, you want somebody athletic who can swim, and I think Johnny Weissmuller would not be a bad idea. He would seem the most logical choice to me, and he even kind of looks like Namor a bit. He could pass it off. Johnny Weissmuller, from the old Tarzan movies, but he didn't have to talk like Tarzan. He could talk in full sentences, and I think he could have pulled Namor off. And if you've ever seen him play Tarzan pissed off, he could do Namor. So he could act Imperious. Captain America, again, you're going to need somebody athletic who, would look good in the costume. I'd take Randolph Scott. And in the 40s, he wasn't that high paid an actor. He wasn't a big star. So you might have been able to get him. I can imagine a lot of actors in that period were like, I'm not putting on that stupid costume. I think you could talk Randolph Scott into it. As far as Human Torch, anybody athletic, again, anybody athletic who could do the physical stuff, why not Buster Crabbe? He played Flash Gordon, he played Buck Rogers, he played Tarzan. Another Olympic athlete who could act. And there you go. Now, here's a new segment called Questions You Didn't Ask. You people asked terrific, perplexing, puzzling, problematic questions, not to be too alliterative. But sometimes I'm surprised there's questions you don't ask. And this will be the debut. Question is, do you regularly follow any YouTube channels? I'm surprised nobody's ever asked me this. I'm like everybody else, or almost everybody else. I mean, YouTube is the choice for TV viewing. If you've ever seen a pie graph of Americans' TV viewing habits, YouTube is the king. Netflix comes next, Amazon Prime, and then, believe it or not, broadcast TV. 25% of Americans still watch broadcast TV. And then you got cable, and then you got all the other streaming services. But if you take broadcast TV, that fascinates me. 25% of the viewing audience, that's more than all of the other streaming services combined. Disney Plus, Paramount, HBO, Max. More people watching TV through a TV antenna. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Makes you think. But YouTube's the king, and yeah, I watch YouTube. I catch up with Critical Drinker. Probably most of you catch up with Critical Drinker. He's funny, and I find him informative. I don't always agree with him on movies, but I like his take. I like to hear what another person thinks, and he's funny. So he seems to hate all the movies I hate, although he likes a few movies I really can't stand. But that's the nature of the beast. Now, as far as movies go, my favorite movie channel for movie criticism it's called Movie Wise. It's all one word, Movie Wise. And this guy, I don't know anything about this guy, but what he does is he'll go back, he'll go back to the silent era, and he'll examine scenes and examine movies and talk about why they work or why they don't. And I'll tell you can learn more. If you watch 3 of these videos, you've learned more than you could learn taking an entire year of film studies at a university. This guy is amazing at pointing out, particularly blocking in movies, how dialogue is delivered, how dialogue is written, how framing is set up. If you have no interest in movies, but you're still interested in comics, this is still of value because his take on, the framing of a picture and the blocking out of action, it all applies to comics as well as cinema. And I always learn something watching one of his movies. And he recommends movies I've either never heard of or have heard of but didn't have the motivations to watch them. And because of him, I watched a whole bunch of movies I normally would never have seen because of his recommendation, and enjoyed all of them. And he also explains a lot of why Hollywood doesn't work anymore, why most films, suck, frankly. And he's not as mean and targeted as Critical Drinker, but he's as insightful, or even more insightful than Critical Drinker. And he just loves movies. And if you love movies, you're gonna dig this channel. I learn something every time he does one. He doesn't do them very often, but maybe every couple of weeks he'll put one of these together. So cool stuff. The most unusual YouTube guy I watch, and I watch him every single day because he puts out 5 videos a week, is a guy named Cash Jordan. And I first started watching them with my wife because she loves shows where people visit other people's houses or whatever. And what this guy is he's a New York City real estate guy. And his videos at the beginning, for years, his videos were about him showing you New York apartments. And okay, so I'm watching it with my wife, but then I started watching them on my own because first of all, the guy's funny. Secondly, he in his apartment videos, he's showing you snapshots of Brooklyn, Manhattan, areas like that, like what they look like today. And he makes these snide comments about what's happening to New York City. And then also the shocking rents. You rent a broom closet, it's going to cost you $3,000 a month. And his takes on New York real estate and how it's contributing to the decline of the city. And then over the past year, he stopped doing apartment videos, even though he's still a realtor, he's still an apartment agent, still renting out apartments, and he started chronicling the city's decline. And man, he's given me so many ideas for stories because he goes out on the street and he talks about how the city's falling apart, the crime, the filth, the homelessness, the migrants, all the rest of it. Now, this guy doesn't take I don't know this guy's politics, it doesn't matter. He's just showing you, he's doing what journalists should do, and he's not a journalist, he doesn't claim to be, but he's doing what journalists should do, and he's showing you what's going on. And he's not really editorializing about it. He's certainly never getting political about it. He seems to just want the city to do better, and of course it's failing all the time. But the videos are fascinating. They're like 15 minutes long, and each one takes a different subject. I mean, it might be shoplifting or high rents or the lack of housing, but he's basically showing you the doom spiral that New York City is in right now, the apparently inescapable decline of the city as it falls apart. And like I said, the guy's personable, he's funny, and he's very, very informative and very, these are fact-driven, personal accounts of the horrible things that are happening in a city that I love. All of his videos, I watch them. It's like watching a train wreck. You can't look away. And I watch them, inform myself and get story ideas, and also, to mourn, basically the death of America's greatest city. But terrific videos. I watch them. Never miss one. I never miss one. All right. If you have questions, answers, maybe you think of some questions that even I can't think of, contact me at brunobookstore@gmail.com, brunobookstore@gmail.com. That's it for this week. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for subscribing and liking, and I'll see you all down the road.